What's up, everybody? March 29th edition of the Fightful MMA podcast. Yours truly, Joe Ferraro. Make sure you follow me online at Showdown Joe. Follow Fightful MMA at Fightful MMA and FightfulMMA.com for all your mixed martial arts news. It is Wednesday evening, 9 p.m., always joined by Sean Pierson. Make sure you follow the former UFC welterweight veteran at Sean Pierson. And Sean, I got to admit something yesterday on your Instagram and on your social media. There was a picture of you at the Leaf game with the missus. I'm not going to lie. Yes, you used the word hashtag smoke show, and that was referring to your wife. I agree, but man, that jersey you were wearing, that was sick. I want that jersey. Where can I get one of those?
China's the best place to get those. They're half price. No, just you get them anywhere, man. Like Wendell Clark, he's my boy. He was my, my idol, my hockey legend growing up. So love Wendell Clark. Me and the wife were both smoke shows. We're good-looking people. Beauty and the Beast, but I wouldn't call her a beast too often. But
hashtag modesty. Yes, for those that don't know, you obviously can't see it, but I'm pointing over to my over my right shoulder ahead of me. The only picture I have on my wall of any sport that's not mixed martial arts related would be the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it is Wendell Clark, a gift given to me by my friends on my 40th. He's the only Maple Leaf that will ever go up on that wall, unless, of course, this team some way somehow finds a way to win a cup in the next 3 to 5 years, and maybe Austin Matthews will go up there. But you got to be happy with how the Leafs are playing, no?
Oh, for sure. And I just figured that's a long time. You've had that picture up there for about 10 years now, then?
I don't think so. Why don't we just say it's 3 years? But yeah, 3 years. But yes, Wendell, for those who don't know, go online, YouTube, and just type in Wendell Clark, Toronto Maple Leafs, if you like, and watch some of his fights. There was a fight he had with somebody one time that was flat out MMA related. He someone against the Minnesota North Stars, where he punched him out, I think, in 3 punches, and there was a brawl on the ice. He literally mounted him, and he just kept going. And I thought, that's the greatest thing I ever seen in my life. He was definitely my hero growing up. Blue collar. I think he was a right winger or defenseman turned left winger, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Right, Sean?
Left winger. I don't remember if he was a defenseman to start, but just an all-around player. He probably would have even had more goals, but unfortunately, in that era, there's a lot of fighting, and even as a captain and a skilled player, he played his role and came out and did the job, which became a fan favorite. But as far as stats are concerned, I think it brought down his stats because his hands got a little weak after a lot of broken hands. He had a lot more goals left in him.
And of course, back injuries. Ladies and gentlemen, the live chat is open. If you do want to chime in there, ask Sean and I some questions, make some comments, by all means, it should be on your screen if you're on the YouTube channel. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. We already have one from Bob the Martian. He says, hockey sucks. Talk about MMA.
Fuck off, leave our chat. No.
Don't leave our chat, Bob. That's but I understand it is an MMA podcast, but Sean and I are huge Toronto Maple Leafs fans. We have suffered our whole lives and never seen them get very far other than the semifinals in '93. So the fact that we've got some hope. We chat about it every so often, but not by much. Vinny Fernando said, dude, they literally just started. Shut up. Oh, he said that to Bob the Martian. That live chat could get ugly. I should have probably read that before I said anything.
I see the live chat. I don't see a live chat here. How do I see it?
If you go to the YouTube channel, Sean, make sure you mute the link that I posted on my social media at Showdown Joe. You can click that, but make sure you mute it, or you're going to get a delay because we're about 7 seconds ahead, or 4 to 5 seconds, ahead of what actually is seen there. So. Let's see here. Sean Bio types, what do you think of Kevin Lee versus Michael Chiesa possibly headlining over guys like BJ Penn versus Dennis Seaver and Johnny Hendricks versus Tim Boach? I would disagree if they did make Kevin Lee versus Michael Chiesa the headliner, because neither of those two guys have the name value or the stock value that a BJ Penn would have against Dennis Seaver or Johnny Hendricks versus Tim Boach. They would need a better main event, in my opinion. Kevin Lee versus Michael Chiesa is a damn good fight. Belongs on the main card because Kevin Lee did show some resolve in his last fight, considering he had a very difficult first round, then comes back and wins it in the second round.
Joe's way too talkative right now. Okay, the point is, I agree with you. The only 3 fights here, it's the only fight with any relevancy in the division. So I don't know if that's a main event fight, but I don't consider the other 2 fights main event either. Again, BJ Penn is one of my all-time favorite fighters, but putting him as a main event right now is just going along the whole Legends line. So I don't think he should be a main event. Johnny Hendricks, I don't think that's a main event fight right now. The Kevin Lee one, if it's a fight night, I think that's a main event. It's not a main event pay-per-view. So,
but that is a fight night, though. That's the thing. It is a fight night, and that's
so
why
as a fight night, I could see him being at that main event because they have to push him. They're trying to build him. Fight nights are to build people. Fight nights aren't to sell. That's the way I look at those. So if you're doing a fight night, you're trying to build some guys up. So putting him as a headliner makes some sense. And BJ Penn and the rest of the guys, again, they've got tons of name value, but there's no relevancy in those fights. They're just legends fights. Let's see what we can do here with these guys.
See, I'd make the argument that because it's in Oklahoma and that's where Johnny Hendricks is from, I would have no problem if he was in the main event.
Well, I'm not. Johnny Hendricks is a little bit of relevancy there because he still can make a push at 185. But again, I don't think either of those two guys are going to sell the fight as far as viewership. He might sell the fight as far as his hometown, but as far as viewerships are concerned, he's not making me want to tune into that Fox card other than the fact that I'm going to be watching a UFC event. You know
Vinny, Vinny Fernando does make a good point, though. Fight nights sometimes aren't to sell, LOL, because tell that to the Kansas City card, which is not a strong card. I get what you're saying, Vinny, but in terms of if you're looking at it from a promotion standpoint, that's what Sean was trying to say. If you're looking at it from a promotional standpoint, UFC Fight Night, in my opinion, you should always have, if possible, number one versus number two, or at least a top guy headlining those fight nights. Unless it's a Fox card. A Fox card, I could understand if you put Demetrius Moneymouth Johnson headlining a Fox card, or a true number one contender fight on a Fox card. But I get these fight nights being there to promote people. And the reason why I say that, this goes back to when the UFC basically started everything. And I used to always talk about the WWE model, where Monday Night Raw at the time was basically designed to sell the pay-per-view. And then you watch a WWE pay-per-view, it's already talking about what to watch on Monday. So it's almost like the circular sort of promotion. So I do get what the UFC tries to do a lot with these fight nights. As Pierson just said, they're there to promote guys to eventually get to pay-per-view.
No, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Those are the free cards that you've got to get your guys that you think have a potential future in the division. You got to build their names up, and you need to give them airtime. So that's where you're going to place them.
Michael Bisping has issued an ultimatum to George St-Pierre, telling him.
Michael Bisping doesn't run the show here. Who's kidding who here? GSP will do whatever he wants. They will make Michael Bisping do whatever GSP wants. Or he's going to fight Romero. Michael Bisping doesn't want that fight. He's not going to get paid as much, and he might end up with a concussion. So who cares what Bisping says? No one gives a fuck.
Well, according to Michael, he's the champion. He calls the shots.
Yeah, he's the champ. He calls no shots. And I guarantee if I go along all the broadcasts, some people are going to agree with me on this one. Like, what is he calling? He can build a fight if he just goes and talks shit. But he's not calling the shots. George is calling the shots in this fight. He's already the favorite.
He is a favorite for sure. Now, the question is this. I'm a firm believer some way, somehow, George can go through that 4-month USADA period and then still get a training camp in there, because I think this actually goes behind the scenes back until December or at least January. I know the press conference and everything came out in March, the pre-fight press conference, but I think this was going back a little bit further. I think George can be more than ready for July. There is talk that I think it was Bisping that actually said it on a podcast, that he said that George or Dana were saying something to the effect of September, and that would put Michael Bisping out for a year in total. And he's saying he's in his prime, blah, blah, blah. I don't see that fight taking place in September. I do see it happen. I do see it happening in July at International Fight Week. Yoel Romero's pissed. He's saying Michael Bisping has basically no huevos. If you don't know what huevos are, basically saying he's got no balls to fight him. And then you got Tyron Woodley saying GSP doesn't want to fight Bisping and that he'll fight Michael Bisping. He'll put his foot in his ass, save the date. Bisping's got some competition here.
I think, to be honest with you, I think all three guys beat Bisping, potentially. But I also think the best thing for George is that someone else takes this fight and he goes and gets Conor. I've said from the start, again, I like the fight, but I don't love the fight. I think Conor and George is where the fight has to be. And I know everybody wants to talk Mayweather, but I think for MMA, and that's the fight to be, because I still say if they box, Mayweather beats them 99 out of 100 or 101 out of 100 times.
Guys, I see your stuff on the chat, so I'll get to it in 1 second. Sean, I get what you're saying, George wanting to, or George potentially taking on Conor. I still think I've got this thing in my head where George not only okay, there's a dichotomy here. George fighting Bisping at 185 would put George in a select few to become a title holder in 2 separate divisions. Only 3 other guys have done that. We know that it's Randy Couture and BJ Penn and Conor McGregor. I also think that he would like to some way, somehow, according to Faraz, before this whole Bisping thing came about, that he could make 155. And then I could see him fighting Conor McGregor with the opportunity to become the first ever champion to hold 3 different belts in 3 different, not at the same time, but in 3 different divisions.
But here's the thing. So if he goes up to 185, what do you think the likelihood and what's the time frame to him to get down to 155? I bet you if he goes up to 185, Conor says, fuck it, I'm going up to 185 to fight George, or let's meet at 170. And because even if they meet at 170, Conor can say, well, listen, I'm the 170-pound champ, because you'll say George left as the champion. I'm the 185-pound champ because George is the 185-pound champ. So Conor can technically say I own the 85, the 70, the 55, and the 45-pound belts. So I see where you're going with this, but I still say if he fights Mayweather, he doesn't come back and fight anybody. So, that's my thought process.
I want to go real quick. Vig posted, Dennis Seaver will definitely beat BJ Penn. I don't know about definitely, because
no chance. The guy is 50 years old, doesn't move that well anymore.
He got Dennis or BJ?
Dennis. He got iced by McGregor, and I don't know.
I think Dennis Seaver's a fantastic fighter for a good 5 to 10 minutes, but that's a 15-minute fight.
He's not beating BJ. Again, maybe I'm just going on nostalgia, but BJ's taking that fight.
Sean Bio has a point that's going to probably – Pierson's talked about this before, but he says, is there a point to rankings or even championships in the UFC?
No, there's 0 point. No one cares anymore. And again, I care about fighting, and we all care about good fights now, but now it's just about putting on good fights, building up fights. McGregor's the champion of all weight divisions now. It doesn't matter. Wherever he wants to fight, whoever he wants to fight, Dana will make it happen. It used
not
to
if he fights Mayweather, because I say if he goes and he fights Mayweather, we are never going to see Conor McGregor back in the UFC. I doubt it.
Hey, time out. You can't take the things I've told you and then play them off as your own now.
I was about to give you credit.
Well, you're right. This Mayweather fight can't happen because when it happens, Conor's gone. But it used to be everybody was Dana's bitch. That's how this works, right? That's how the UFC works. So there's been a contrast now that Dana is Conor's bitch right now. And that's the Conor will tell you that. Mayweather just told Dana that you're my bitch too. I read somewhere that, Mayweather came out and said, listen, Dana, I run the show. If the fight's going to happen, it's because I say it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's not up to Dana. It's up to him.
Yeah, and I like this now. There's the changing of the guard. I mean, it's good. I like how someone else holds the cards right now. They hold the UFC hostage a little bit.
Vinny also says this: shouldn't they give Romero someone to fight on the same card as Bisping and Gisping, or Bisping and GSP? Excuse me. And I say, yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect for what? Because when George wins, he's not fighting Romero. Let's just call a spade here. I wouldn't fight Romero. I don't know. They're fucking retarded. But not when he's got bigger paydays and easier fights. It's not that he's scared to fight him. I'll fight Romero if you're going to give me a big enough payday. But my point is, Romero's not a big payday like McGregor. Do you mean? So why would, if I'm George and I win the 185-pound belt, and let's just pretend that McGregor's still in MMA, why would I say, yeah, let's fight Bisping or let's fight Romero for a smaller payday just to defend my title when I can drop to potentially, like you said, 155 to win another title with a payday that's 3 or 4 times as big, and it's an easier fight. Like, I don't know.
I've said it before. I cannot see George winning that title. First of all, if he beats Bisping. So if he defeats Bisping, I don't see him, like you say, fighting Romero. I personally don't want to see that fight, and I think he'd be chasing prize fights, money fights. So I agree with what you're saying right there. We have someone signed in on Fightful. Pretty much know who it is. It's probably Sean Ross Sapp, who asked this question. Is Sean Pierson the second best Sean on Fightful? Rhetorical question.
I didn't even know there was another Sean on this webcast. I thought I sort of owned Fightful, but I don't know. Never met this other gentleman. Does he even spell his name right? Does he spell it S-C-A-N?
He spells it S-E-A-N, yes.
Yeah, so his relevancy right now is not here in the MMA forum, but he could have a separate podcast with me and we can fight this one out. But yeah.
I'd like to see that actually, because both you guys are extremely opinionated. The F-bombs, just call it the F-bomb podcast, to be honest with you. Vig says there should be no official rankings. You can figure out who the number one contender is without it. Only the booker like Joe Silva should have access to rankings. Well, Joe Silva is no longer the matchmaker, but I see what you're saying. Actually, Pierson had a fantastic point about two, 3 weeks ago, when the idea came up that, rankings the way they are right now are so subjective that perhaps we should consider some sort of point system where, and I elaborated when I spoke to Trigg, when I spoke to Sean Sapp and Elias Theodoro on the podcast, and I said, listen, I like this idea, sort of a point system. It would be a challenge. It'd be difficult. And Sean Sapp did mention, I think Fight Matrix does have the best rankings out there, but sort of a point system where you come into the UFC.
You guys see how the light shines off my head right now? Angelic. I look angelic right now. Sorry to interrupt, but I just feel like I'm looking at my screen. I look angelic. But keep going, Joe. Keep going.
I was gonna just look for some sort of music of angels. You have a mirror in front of you?
No, I just look at my computer and it's got a picture of me and you, and I just make the picture of me larger because I can't say I'm looking at the bigger picture of you the whole time. So I just look at the picture of me.
I laugh when people post or say things like, "Oh my God, Sean Pierson and Showdown Joe look similar." I'm like, I'm the better looking one. Why would you even compare Pierson to me?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Even you don't believe that, son. Come on.
I totally believe that. It's factual.
Okay.
It's factual. Let's see here. What else we got here in the chat here? Romero's fighting Bisping 6 weeks later, supposedly. Well, no, they're not going to fight 6 weeks later. He'd love it. This is a legit question. Why is everyone bald on Fightful except for Sean Sapp, Elias, and Riddle? Well, I guess everyone's not just bald. It's just me, Pierson, and Trigg.
And the call of spade is spade here. Joe's bald and I shave my head, so there's a difference there too.
I've got hair, not as much. Yeah. I might be follically challenged, but yes, I do shave my head daily. Correct.
No. You're bald. I shave my head. That's the difference here. See the shine that Joe's got? He can't get rid of the shine, okay, guys? My head, if I let grow for a couple days, the shine goes away.
Back to Bisping for a moment. Pierson, jerk. With Romero not having an opponent just yet and no one there for Tyron Woodley, what do you do with both of these guys?
To be honest,
Jacques has got an opponent. I'd love to see that fight with Romero again. It's not going to happen.
If I'm Romero right now, I wait in the wind. Like he needs a big payday, and I think he's proven that he's the next title contender. Again, unless Connor decides that he wants the 185-pound belt, I think he should wait in the wind a little bit to see what happens here. Because if he takes a lower level opponent and doesn't have a good showing, that's the fear that people have here, right? If they don't get, it's not only winning, you need to win, but you need to win in a great capacity. You can't win or squeak out a 3-round or a 5-round decision or a 3-round decision on a guy who's ranked 7th. Because then if the guy who's ranked behind you, like Jacare, comes out and murks his next opponent, he jumps ahead of you in the title shot line. So you either have to wait it out, take your chances, or go out there and make sure you perform.
Yeah, Sean Sapp is naming everybody in the site that's bald: Jimmy Van, Alex, and Jeff Hawkins. And according to Sean Sapp, Jimmy Van and Alex are bald as shit.
And how do you classify you? If they're bald as shit, what are you classifying there? Bald is not quite a swear word, or what is it?
Listen, I make no bones about it. I don't care that I'm bald. I don't care that I shave my head. It is what it is. Oh, that's right, Vinny. That's right. But Anna has hair, and Sean Sapp says Anna's got a wig on. I doubt that. The beautiful Anna has beautiful hair. We'll take it from there.
She hot? Post a picture. I haven't even seen her.
She's I don't have it here. I can't post right now. I'm so totally not Sean Sapp. I wish I were. He's great. Okay, whatever, Sean. Now you're being silly. Looks like they're booking Alistair Overeem and Fabrizio Verdum 3 for UFC 213 in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, as long as this fight's been going on, because these two guys have fought so long ago, it's happening again because it's the heavyweight division, Pierson. Like, I mean, there's just the depth just isn't there.
Well, the 6 of them just rotate who's got a title shot, who doesn't have a title shot, who tests positive for what, and they just sort of rotate. You know what I mean? Like, the only guy clean, like, just keep giving Mark on fights. I like that
guy. Speaking of testing, with Bellator NYC, the pay-per-view going down in June, I think it's June 24th, if I'm not mistaken, the question was asked of Scott Coker, are you doing any testing, extra testing, anything like that? And he says, well, we're going to follow what the New York State Athletic Commission does, which obviously has us scared because that's in my opinion, an IQ test. I don't know what the New York State Athletic Commission.
Why would you be scared about that then? Because that means the show might actually go off.
So you're saying with the two gentlemen in the main event, and Chael Sonnen and Wanderlei Silva, who've had Mexican supplements in the past, just let them do what they got to do?
Well, my point is, if you put USADA testing on them, we probably won't get a pay-per-view, and Bellator goes out of business, and then the UFC once again is a monopoly on everything. And so, again, I'm not saying good or bad, but we all know what's going to happen if you give it the wild, wild west, especially with the guys they got out there. When you're having 45-year-old people fighting in there, sometimes they need some Mexican supplements.
Vinny's got a good point here. He hopes Francis Ngannou keeps winning, so it's not the same 6 guys rotating title shots. Ngannou's going to be up there, man. That dude's a bad man, big time.
Has he won 2 fights now?
Oh yeah, I think he's won like 3 or 4 in a row, or I think he's undefeated.
No, he's top 6 then. They'll put Frank Mir back up there somehow, but
Oh, Frank Mir's in trouble. Frank Mir might actually be on the Fightful MMA podcast soon. I'm working on that as we speak. So he could be my interesting guy on a Monday. Sean Bayo also says Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis on this show is almost a 4-letter word. And I'll say it again. He might be the nicest guy ever. But after what he said and what he did after that Travis Brown fight and what he said about
no one remembers or cares. It's done. That was last week's news. It's over.
You're saying I should get over it?
Yeah, you get over it. Fans get over it. Listen, at the end of the day, and again, I'm talking about fans in general, but listen, you can be the greatest fighter in the world. You lose a fight, you're done. Okay, people forget about everything else. Same thing here. Derek Lewis went out. He was an idiot. We're past it now. It is what it is.
When he fights Mark Hunt, are you going to be sitting there hoping Mark Hunt does what Mark Hunt does?
Of course I am. You know what I mean? But if he knocks Mark Hunt out, I'm going to be like, bad motherfucker. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Like, again, I want to see him get iced, but if he keeps icing people, just like, hey, it's called spade a spade. I like to see John Jones get iced, but I know he's the most dominant fighter in MMA. I mean, but I still like to see him get iced. I think he's an idiot. I think he's a shitty role model, but at the end of the day, he is what he is. You know what I mean? Like, he's the man out there.
Do you think he's ever going to learn his lessons?
No. He'll come back and tell us he found Jesus, whoever else anybody prays up to. But, he's too much money, too young, not enough real guidance. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? And when I say all this, I'm not saying he's a bad person because tons of people go through it. He's just dumb enough to get caught doing it all in the spotlight he's in. So.
Jordan Lane, I see you mentioned that the UFC is going to put together Overeem and Ngannou. We mentioned right before you joined us that Overeem and Verdum 3 will likely be taking place in Vegas, UFC 213. So Ngannou will have to be fighting someone else. If I'm not mistaken, Ngannou might have an opponent already. Excuse me. Vig, you say the light heavyweight division is weaker than heavyweight. Man, you might have a good point. Sean Ross Sapp talks about it all the time, how he cannot stand that light heavyweight division. And Sean, you talk about those guys getting rotating titles or title shots. You can say the same thing at 205, which used to be a murderer's row when Shogun, Machida, John Jones, and all those guys were competing. Light heavyweight isn't as good as it once was.
Let's call us middleweight's the same friggin' deal. Welterweight will soon be the same deal because it seems like the top welterweight, not all the top welterweights, but they're going now because we're letting everybody fight at their contracts. UFC's not stepping up to win these guys over. Like Larkin was a big loss. That was an up-and-coming welterweight. So, again, they're going to make these other organizations more competitive. It's just whether or not they're able to build their athletes into superstars like the UFC's done. And, again, I talked about it last week where I don't see the UFC right now building up some of the younger talent. So I think a lot of weight classes, because I think middleweight's weak. Other than your top 3 to 4, I think it gets weak pretty quick.
C. Phoenix writes, Rumble would have the best chance of knocking Jones out. Yes, fact. I like that. My only concern is that's a fight that we've all wanted to see for a very long time. But Rumble has to get past DC. And I don't know if it's hard to say. We're going to find out in a couple of weeks in Buffalo. I'd love to be down there to cover that fight. I don't think I'm getting credentialed. The credentials were handled last week, Pierson, and I didn't get that call. I didn't get that email, so it looks like I might not be going. But man, How sweet would it be if Rumble does defeat DC because John Jones comes back and we get Anthony Rumble Johnson, John Jones, a fight we want to see a while ago?
Well, I think it's a great matchup, and matchups make fights. But who's to say that John Jones doesn't dismantle Johnson? Again, Johnson's got the best chance of knocking anybody out. Like, he's proven that he can knock out anybody out at any given time. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. I feel like we always build these people up against John Jones, and John Jones just does what he does, and and he makes it look easy. Like, he's dismantled top opponents so many times.
John?
Yeah, Gustafson's the only one where I actually thought he might have lost that fight. And even when I say he might have lost it, I didn't go back and rewatch it with a fine-tooth comb. The reason why I thought he could have lost is because he'd never been that close with anybody. So when someone, when you're so used to watching John Jones dominate people, when rounds are close, you have a tendency to want to give it the other way because no one else has ever done any of that to John Jones. But I had Gustafson, I think, 3-2 in that fight. But again, I watched it live, which is also a little tougher to gauge. But I had Gustafson take that fight 3-2. So that's a fight that I've been dying to see, but Gustafson couldn't get back on that winning streak he needed to get on to fight Jones again.
Yeah, the problem with Gustafson is that he's so great, but the top 4 in this division are so good that they stay. Right now, Glover and Gustafson are fighting in Stockholm, which is going to be a fantastic fight. It's going to say a lot about both their careers because if Glover wins, Gustafson's just people are going to hate him.
Glover's not taking that fight, I don't think.
Well, I'm saying if he does, but if Gustafson wins, again, it just keeps him, in the mix. But he lost to Rumble, he's lost to DC, he's lost to John Jones. He's like a number 3 or number 4 gatekeeper. It's just so weird how that division moves around, or doesn't move around per se.
And the hardest part there is, what's my cat doing? The hardest part there is the best matchup for me for John Jones is Gustafson, because where John Jones has had his difficulties, and I understand it, it's the height. Right? It's John Jones's biggest advantage is his reach. So when all of a sudden that they're on equal terms with Gustafson, that's not as easy to deal with because he doesn't do that every day. Every day he trains, he's got a reach advantage on every single opponent he has, every single training partner. He's used to that. He's used to guys like Cormier trying to take him down. He's not used to guys that have the same reach advantage he does, and it's a little bit difficult to deal with.
Do you have the live chat on your screen yet?
No, I didn't even bother.
Okay. There's some good conversations going on with some of the boys on there. They're all the boys, the peeps on there, talking about matching up a variety of heavyweights versus each other and stopping this Verdum versus Overeem sort of stuff where, heck, it is what it is at heavyweight. Pit the number 15 guy versus the number 4 guy, for example, Cain Velasquez versus Tubura or something of that nature. Guys that we may not know, but are in the top 15 against guys that are in the top 5 and see who can sink and swim. Considering that division, I don't mind it, although it is a bit of a risk because if Cain Velasquez mops up the number 14 or 15 guy, you've destroyed him.
I don't mind it either because the truth is I don't like watching the division all that much. So it'll spark things up a little bit. We'll see some knockouts because there will be some mismatches in there. Not all of them, but there will be a couple. And then we'll get a couple surprises as well. There'll be a couple lower ranked guys that come up big, I think, and do some great things. So, I think it's almost the way this whole sport's going anyways. Like we talked about the ranking system. Who gives a fuck? Just put on some good fights and let's see what happens.
You mentioned, you've said it before, you don't like the heavyweight division. You could care less. Meanwhile, most people actually do enjoy it because it's just a train wreck. You just never know what's going to happen. Now, is that because if a fight goes past 5 minutes, you're like...
Yeah, it's the first round. I want to see every heavyweight fight first round, and then after the first round, I'm not going to say every heavyweight, but after the first round, I'm like, all right, it's done. Now it's a slip and slide. You know what I mean? Push, slide behind. Push, slide behind. Maybe a big punch here and there. And again, it's not their fault. I'm not downplaying heavyweights. The truth of the matter is if you're 260 pounds, to go at a high-level pace for 25 minutes is much more difficult than it is for a 135 or a 125 pounder. It's a larger body to try and oxygenate, but it is what it is. Now, you also look at styles of fighters. You look at a Mark Hunt who can go a long time, but that's because he slows. The pace is very slow. So I don't know. Again, I don't hate all heavyweight fights. It's just not I like the mid-range fights, and maybe that's also because I'm around that weight class. Like I like 55, 170, 185. Those are my favorite 3 weight classes. But don't get me wrong. Like right now, Conor McGregor is my favorite fighter, or one of them. So he's a 45 or a 55er. So I'm not biased at any one weight class. It's just that's where I have a tendency to want to watch the fights.
Vig, I see what you wrote there. I'm trying to just make some sense of it.
Are you calling the
Because
guy
I don't know
stupid? That's rude.
he says, Vig, they're building Derek Lewis and Ngannou up too slow. They should have fought higher ranked guys than Travis Brown and Arlovsky in their last fights. And the reason why I want to play devil's advocate with that, and I don't necessarily agree, is because Travis Brown and Arlovsky have names. So you've got to basically, you want to build some people up. Sometimes you got to get them to fight names, and those are good tests. I mean, Derek Lewis taking on Travis Brown was a good test for Derek Lewis. And Ngannou, maybe not the greatest test in Arlovsky, because Arlovsky is just he's in the twilight of his career. Let's just say that. I don't think he should be competing against anyone in the top 10, let alone the top 15. But I do get the UFC slowly building, not slowly, but building those guys the way they are. But after what they did to their opponents, now it's time for these guys to fight some bad boys and some big boys that have some serious power.
Yeah, because devil's advocate is you build these guys up too quickly and then they fall early in their careers and then they're done. It's not that they're done, but their names aren't going to be as big. If you look at boxing as sort of a blueprint for that, you know, again, I don't want to ever see an MMA fighter go 34-0 before he has a real test, but boxers, they do that, right? They build up where guys have these extraordinary records, you know, 34 wins and 32 KOs, all to get their first real test and then get busted open in a championship fight. But it's a huge buildup for one fight. If you end that, you know, if you send, like I actually thought Alvarez, if we talk boxing a little bit, Alvarez shouldn't have fought Mayweather this early in his career because I don't think he should have had that loss yet. He should have had more experience. You took a little bit of his persona away, right? Because he was coming up as this young stud, heavy hitter, killing people. I like the fact that people were talking about him and Mayweather, but you shouldn't have had that matchup. It wasn't right for him in his career yet, other than maybe a big payday. Same thing with MMA fighters. Although they might be ready, very few guys have stood that test. John Jones is one of the few guys I can think of that took the test early in his career and passed with flying colors.
Yeah, Vig, I get what you're saying. It wouldn't hurt Tabura or Volkov to lose to Cain Velasquez. They have nothing to lose. I concur. I agree. But
everybody has something to lose. When you lose as an MMA fighter, you lose half your paycheck, and your next paycheck's not as big, and that's standard. So to me, saying you've got nothing to lose, I agree with it in principle because as a competitor, there's nothing wrong with losing early in your career. There's nothing wrong with losing if you bounce back right. But remember that this is, you know, what's what I'm looking for here. This is a job. So when I lose half my paycheck because I lost a fight, a high risk fight, and then on top of that, my next paycheck is smaller now because, you know, as they build up fighters, a win gets you more for your next fight. So he's actually taking a double on a loss. He's losing twice for his paycheck.
I want to finish my point there because Vig, if you're not careful, and I say this in jest, we all know Sean Rossap is on the Fightful. He's live chatting with Fightful. We have to be careful when we use the name Cain Velasquez because SRS goes nuts whenever you mention Cain Velasquez because Cain Velasquez just simply doesn't fight. He's fought like once in the past 86 years, maybe twice in the past 200 years. He's always injured. So we got to figure someone else in that breath there as to who these younger heavyweights or heavyweights with lower stock values need to compete against. It sucks. Cain Velasquez, listen, I love Cain Velasquez. Love to see him compete, but the guy his body can't do it no more, man. And there it is. It didn't take long, but Fightful or Sean Rossap I said, because Cain never expletive fights. It sucks, Sean Pierson. I mean, I love Cain Velasquez, always have, but the dude's body can't handle it, man.
No, it is what it is. You know, it's at a point, and then, you know, I don't know how much of a focus he has on fighting right now. Like maybe it's with the injuries, but family and things like that. Always seemed to be a great guy when I've met him, but you know, it is what it is. Like maybe they need to bring, you know, Kimbo or Dada back, and you know, get them in the octagon, so our guys can beat up some big name cans. Yeah,
listen, Vinny, Fernando. Fist pump if you see the screen. I completely agree because I had this conversation with almost everybody about a week and a half ago. I do. Vinny says, quote, I get sad when I think of Cain because he could have been one of the best heavyweights ever, but his body fell apart, end quote. And I agree. I totally agree that Cain could have been one of the greatest of all time.
I could have been one of the greatest of all time too if I had trained harder and had a little bit more skill and I was younger. It's, you know, it is what it is.
Listen, I'm not going to BS you people that are tuning in right now, okay? If Sean Pierson was able to get into the UFC at a younger age or grew up in a different time, there is no doubt in my mind Pierson would have been one of the greatest ever. It just so happens that guys like Pierson, guys like Antonio Carvalho, a lot of people from our area got started late in the UFC because we just couldn't build the guys couldn't be built here. And then, if anyone has a chance, go find Pierson's fight versus, was it Chad Saunders? If you can find it online. I think Sanders puts you in an armbar and you're like, that's not happening. And he basically runs around the cage to get out of the armbar. I mean, some of the stuff Pierson used to do and some of the stuff that I've seen him do in training. I mean, man, a 25-year-old Pierson in the UFC right now would have been absolutely fantastic. Is that one of the things you think about, Sean, every so often, how the regrets, or it's like, dude, it is what it is?
It is what it is. I don't give a fuck. Like, to me, at the end of the day, my dream was to make it. I made it. But, I think at 25, the only real, like, the big differences were, like, if I knew how to train. Because when I was fighting early in my career, I didn't train. To me, a fight was a barroom fight. I didn't care. I mean, like, you called me, hey, Sean, you want to fight next weekend? I'm like, sure. It's a trip to Montreal. Girls are going to love it. My boys are all coming down to party. That's all I cared about. So, again, at that time, that point in I wouldn't call it a career, but I wasn't focused on fighting. I just fought because I liked it. It was men's league hockey to me. It was great, good times. But the only thing I wish I had been in the UFC younger for is because my personality in the UFC would have been a lot different. I came in at a time when I had just lost a job due to my old image of being the pimp. So I was very careful with the way I spoke. I was very toe the company line, 34. So again, I would change that stuff, but everything else, everything happens for a reason. I'm happy. I'm good. Still ruggedly handsome, good looking, and charismatic.
I respectfully disagree.
Modest as well.
Sean Bio, that's a Sean's today. Sean Bio, quote, if Cody beats TJ, he wants to drop down to flyweight and make DJ earn the title defense record. As much as I like this, it's time to stop the super fights, end quote. All right, hold on. Sean Bio, I like these super fights. I like these mega fights, these prize fights, because it's what we all want to see. Now, do I think Cody wants to drop down to 125? I don't know, because we've talked about it on the show here that we want to see Demetrius move up. I'd rather see DJ move up and fight a guy like Cody or fight a guy like Dillashaw or have a rematch with Dominic Cruz, because DJ is so dominant in that division that there's really nobody there that's going to give him any competition just yet. I know people could say that if Sergio Pettis defeats Henry Cejudo, there's a good challenge there. I respectfully disagree, not just because DJ is DJ. The person that's going to beat Demetrius Pierson is Father Time, because the guy's a perfect mixed martial artist, in my opinion. And until that happens, you need someone that's in their early 20s right now to come up and be in their prime at 25, 26. Someone like potentially Jose Shorty Torres. There's a guy right there. When he gets into his prime, DJ's going to be older. But right now, I can't see DJ being defeated by anyone in the world at 125 pounds.
I don't know. I said the same thing until Kobe came out and destroyed friggin' Dominic Cruz. So, you never know what's going to happen in this sport. I agree, and I'm going to say I like was it Sean Bio? I like his point on the super fights, because part of me says it's a slippery slope right now. If you keep having these guys dictate what's happening with super fights, what happens? You're going to keep the same athletes in the limelight, and it gets very hard to build up these other athletes to get to the spots that they are. Do you mean if you keep having super fights, what are these other athletes fighting for? What's their goal in mind, and what are you doing with them?
You can do it, though. I'll tell you why you can do it, because if these guys are having super fights, champions, blah, 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 it does give the opportunity for the other guys to sort of weed themselves out as to who the true number one contender or number two guy is in each division, if it needs to be done.
But your key word there, if it needs to be done. Like right now, for instance, you've got number two contenders like Romero saying, well, I'm here. I've proved myself. I'm here.
Yes, that I agree with 100%. Right.
So that's what my point is. So what's going to happen now? So let's say Romero could be a potential superstar. Let's say he's potentially a huge superstar. We just haven't got there yet. He needs that title to do it. We might never see it, because George wins the title. George says, fuck that guy. He's a beast. I'm going to fight Connor. And Romero, I think again, great shape, great phenom. He's 41 or 42, I think, though. I know he can probably fight until he's 50, but my point is, some guys are going to get missed here, right? So to me, these super fights, you know, I think, I don't know, let's just have another 1,000 interim titles. I don't know, fuck.
That's what they're talking about before. These belts sometimes actually mean anything.
Well, the belts don't mean anything now. The belt used to mean you got the biggest payday. It doesn't mean that anymore. Connor's belt means you got the biggest payday. And then look at, like, Nate Diaz beat Connor, and even in the second fight, that wasn't a Connor didn't kill Nate in the second fight, but perception is everything. Like, perception is that Connor beat the welterweight world champion in Nate, you know what I mean, which obviously wasn't even close to being true. It's how you build it. Like, what did Nate get other than a big paycheck and a shut the fuck up and sit down until we call you again after he had these fights? You know what I mean? Like, he moves the needle. He just doesn't move the needle like Connor.
A couple of you guys are saying it's unfortunate. Sean Bios says it's unfortunate Scoggins and Lineker can't make flyweight. And Vig replied, Lineker can definitely make 125. Scoggins is bigger. Lineker's proven time and time again that this guy cannot make, will not, doesn't do it properly at 125 pounds. I mean, he's done it he's failed so many times. It's unfortunate because he'd have been a fantastic challenge to Demetrius Johnson, although I think Demetrius would have won that fight no matter what. Scoggins
I don't think it's even that close fight. We're basing this off of him being a heavy hitter, which he's proven he is. But who's proven to us that they can hit Dimitri? So that's not a close fight. I think that's a cake. Nothing's a cakewalk, but Dimitri will make it look like a cakewalk.
Vinny Fernando says, just like when Amanda Nunes made a few $100K and Ronda got $3 million. Hang on. I'll tell you one thing. You heard Conor McGregor actually tell Eddie Alvarez, he laughed at him at the press conference saying, you didn't even renegotiate your contract for pay-per-view points. You're keeping what you signed. I don't necessarily blame the UFC for not paying Amanda Nunes more than a few $100K when her management potentially should have went in there and say, hey, whoa. We want some points in this pay-per-view. We also don't know if that actually happened, but based on the record, the public record, she only made a few $100K while Ronda got reported or basically got her $3 million. I don't know about you, Sean Pierson, but if I was fighting somebody, you were fighting somebody at that big of a draw, you damn right I'm renegotiating my contract and getting pay-per-view points because this is a life changer for me.
I agree 100%, but at that point now you got to fire your manager, because to get a real manager that knows what he's doing probably isn't the manager you have at that point. Because most guys' managers at the low level are buddies or hacks or whoever else. Like that's the one. Again, it might have gotten better in the last 4 years that I've been out of the game, but you know what I mean? I remember, and again, I'm not going to call people out as managers, but I remember, no one's talking to me. I signed with the UFC. Actually, I'll go even further back. No one's talking to me. I signed with Bellator. I'm getting phone calls. My deal drops out with Bellator because I got injured. I'm not getting phone calls returned. I signed with the UFC. That same manager's calling me back. And I'm like, well, what the fuck am I going to pay you for? Like, what's the logic here? I had to get my own contract, which is already negotiated. Unfortunately, I did it myself. So what value do you bring to me? You mean you just want 20% of the cut that I already did here? And there was no guaranteed sponsorship coming in. And again, I'm not saying there's good managers out there, but I mean, how do you, as a fighter, there's no set rule on how we get these. We're not mature enough as a sport to understand. Like, again, numerous occasions, I think George has had some problems with run-ins with managers in the past. It's a shady business. And for most fighters and most people, it's a hard business to sort of, your business is fighting and competing. It's a whole different business about negotiating your own contract with your manager and finding a good manager. That's a tough job. You know what I mean? Again, I'm sure it's getting better and it will get better as money gets bigger, but it's not an easy, it's not as easy as just saying, I'm going to go in there and ask for more money. That's my point here.
Yeah. Ninja Pirate, I see what you're saying. We live in a time where Elias was calling out Dan Kelly. He actually called out Rashad Evans. Didn't get Rashad Evans. Apparently he's getting Brad Tavares in Vegas. So don't be surprised as Elias, another one of our Fightful MMA co-host guests here, is now fighting a big fight there. By the way, Pierson.
Who did Elias get?
Brad Tavares.
Okay, that's a good fight. That's
a really good fight. That's likely happening in Vegas, to my understanding. Vig, how dare you? Dan Kelly would beat Elias Theodoro. Never. Don't say that here.
I don't see that either. Weren't they on the same show together? Like, were they both on The Ultimate Fighter?
Yes, and that's why Elias said he'd be more than happy to fight Dan Kelly if Dan Kelly beats Rashad Evans, because Rashad Evans is now someone that is on Dan Kelly's resume as a winner. So why not? They were on the show together. They never got to compete. But I personally, that matchup, I see Elias winning.
I see him too. Again, Dan Kelly's just a guy who's going to give people problems. I still don't understand how he beat Rashad Evans. So I don't know. That guy's he's a grinder. Again, Dan Kelly, he's a good grinder too, but I think Elias outgrinds him.
Yes.
I don't know. Elias wins that on cardio.
Vig, how dare you? 4-letter word. Kidding. Guys, thank you to everyone who came on the live chat. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live. We're going to wrap this up right now. To those who tuned in on iTunes or on Stitcher later on, thank you very much for also tuning in. Try and get on live now. We're moving forward now with this live chat. Sean Rossap one day told me about it. I didn't know how to do it. I figured it out this week when I went solo on Monday. I absolutely love the live chat portion of these podcasts. Sean and I have fun. Trig and I have fun. But speaking of Trig, tomorrow, Frank Trigg will join me likely 12:30 Eastern or 1 Eastern, depends on what time that poor guy wakes up in Hawaii. I know I said poor guy in Hawaii in the same sentence, but it is very early for him, 6 a.m. Or 6:30 a.m. Pierson, before we let you go, what's going on with you over the next week? You did mention last week that you're trying to be a professional athlete again.
Yeah, that failed. So now I'm back to just trying to be super dad. I don't know. My boys' hockey ended up, so it's lacrosse season starting up. Yeah, I'll go out there, and as long as the moms still think I'm hot, I think I'm okay. But again, I keep telling myself that they're looking at me, but they might not be. But they're not looking at you, so.
Well, they're not looking at me because I don't come to your son's games, and now I'm going to come to your son's games, and we'll see who they look at, me or you.
Joe, why do you put yourself in these poor situations? Like, again, it's all men that are listening and watching to us right here, but common sense shows that you're just an older, watered down, not athletic version of me.
I've never liked you. I've never liked you since we met 20 years ago. I don't like you. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you do follow him online at Sean Pierson. Who's that?
It's my cat. Say hi.
What's the kitty's name?
Creamy. For creamsicles, my favorite popsicle as a kid. Creamsicles. So we named him Creamsicle, and we've called him Creamy ever since.
You're cute, Pierson.
I know.
I'd hug you.
Yeah, ruggedly handsome, cute.
Follow him online, ladies and gentlemen, at Sean Pierson on social media. Follow yours truly at Showdown Joe, of course, at Fightful MMA and FightfulMMA.com for all your mixed martial arts. We thank mixed martial arts news. We thank everybody once again in the live chat. You guys are absolutely fantastic. Thank you for coming on there. Tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern and or 1 p.m. Eastern, depending on what time Trig wakes up. I'll be ready at 12:30, but I will wait and I will tweet out the link. Come join us again and get on Trig's nerves. He's easily irritated. He tries to be all professional now, but he's all irritated. Is that a Roddy Piper doll, Pierson?
Oh, Roddy Piper! One of the greatest talkers of all time. Look at this man.
The Hot Rod was a legend. The legend. By the way, Sean Rossap said you are the pound for pound, the best. You're number one on Fightful.
I agree.
What's that?
Number one best looking guy on the show. I agree.
Number one at Fightful because you defeated Matt Riddle. So when it comes to fighting, you're pound for pound number one. Although you never fought Elias, and Elias never fought Riddle. So
Elias, we train together. He knows.
That's amazing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, listen, we thank you all for tuning in. We sincerely appreciate it, but don't forget tomorrow, 12:30 and or 1 p.m. Eastern. Yours truly, Joe Ferraro and Frank Trigg. Give Frank a follow at Frank Trigg, but make sure you join us. I will tweet the exact time once we go live. For now, we say goodbye.
Later.